I can still feel the weight of that first deployment briefing, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry bees, casting harsh shadows on the faces of my fellow soldiers. It was 2009 and I was Alex, 35 years old, a sergeant in the U.S. Army with 2 tours already under my belt. But this one to Afghanistan felt different, heavier, like the Kevlar vest I strapped on every morning. Under don't ask, don't tell, the policy that hung over us like a guillotine, I had learned to bury parts of myself deeper than any foxhole. Being gay in the military wasn't just a secret. It was a potential discharge, a career ender, a label that could strip you of everything you'd fought for. Every day was a performance, a mask I wore to blend in, laughing at the right jokes, nodding at stories of weekend conquests that made my stomach churn. My story started years earlier in basic training at Fort Benning, where the drill sergeants barked orders from dawn till dusk, the stomp of boots on gravel a constant rhythm that drilled discipline into our bones. That's where I met Mike, a fellow recruit with sharp blue eyes and a laugh that cut through the exhaustion like sunlight. We bonded over late-night watches, sharing smokes under the stars, the flick of a lighter illuminating our faces in fleeting glows. "You ever feel like this place is sucking the life out of you?" He'd whisper, his voice low and intimate, smoke curling between us like a shared secret. I'd nod, heart racing, and soon those talks turned physical, stolen kisses in the shadows of the barracks, hands exploring in hurried, desperate moments that left me breathless. "Alex, you're the only real thing here," he'd say, his breath hot against my neck, fingers tracing lines of fire on my skin. It was my first taste of love, raw and exhilarating, a balm against the grind of training, making the endless push-ups and obstacle courses bearable because I had him. But paradise shattered when rumors spread like wildfire through the platoon. A jealous squad mate overheard something innocuous, a laugh too lingering, a glance too long, and suddenly we were hauled in for questioning. The room was sterile, cold air conditioning humming relentlessly, the interrogator's voice flat and accusatory. "Private, explain these allegations of inappropriate conduct." Mike cracked first, his face paling under the harsh lights. "It was a joke, sir." "Alex, misread it. He's the one who pushed things. I was just playing along." His words hit like a gut punch, betrayal twisting in my chest as I sat there, silent, fists clenched under the table. I replayed our moments in my head, the whispered promises, the way he'd pull me close in the dark, saying, "No one gets us like we do." But now it was all lies. The investigation dragged on for weeks, days of scrutiny where every detail was dissected, the click of typewriters documenting fabricated stories. He got promoted, walking away with a slap on the wrist. I got a warning etched into my permanent record: conduct unbecoming. From that day, trust became a four-letter word, something fragile and dangerous. "Never again," I muttered to myself in the mirror that night, the steam from the shower fogging my reflection, hot water scalding my skin as if to wash away the hurt. Afghanistan amplified that isolation, turning it into a tangible force. Arrival at the forward operating base was a sensory overload, dust storms whipping sand into every crevice like tiny needles, the roar of C-130 engines fatting as we unloaded gear with clanks and grunts. My routine settled into a monotonous cycle of patrols, dawn briefings in the ops tent, the clink of coffee mugs against metal tables, the bitter smell of instant brew cutting through the morning chill that seeped into bones. I'd climb into the Humvee, the door slamming with a heavy metallic thud that echoed my resolve, engine rumbling to life like a beast awakening from slumber. Tires hissed over gravel roads snaking through jagged mountain passes, the wind whistling through cracks in the armor, carrying scents of dry earth, distant smoke from village fires, and the faint, acrid tang of gunpowder that lingered in the air like a promise of violence. Days blended into one another, scanning horizons for threats through binoculars, the occasional pop of distant gunfire reminding us that safety was an illusion. Lunch breaks were hasty affairs, MRE packets torn open with a satisfying rip, the sizzle of chemical heaters activating meals that tasted like cardboard laced with nostalgia for home-cooked food. Evenings brought downtime in the communal tent, polishing weapons with the rhythmic scrape of cloth on metal grounding me in the present, or writing letters home, pen scratching against paper with half-truths to spare my family worry. "Mom, Dad, everything's fine here. The team's solid and I'm staying sharp. Miss the farm and your apple pie." But inside, turmoil raged unchecked. Why fight for a country that forces you to hide who you are? I'd whisper to myself during solo watches, the night wind howling responses no one heard, sand pattering against the tent like insistent fingers tapping on glass. Family back in Ohio pictured me as the hero son, settling down with a nice girl after service, starting a family with backyard barbecues and kids running around. Mom's letters smelled faintly of lavender, urging, "Find someone special, Alex, life's too short." Dad's were gruff pride, "Keep your head down, son, make us proud." But they didn't know the half of it, the ache for authenticity, the envy I felt hearing squad mates boast about girlfriends or wives, their voices booming over card games, the shuffle of decks filling the air with casual camaraderie. "You okay, Sarge?" seemed distant lately, a buddy once asked, dealing cards with a flick of his wrist. "Just focused on the mission," I'd reply, deflecting with a forced smile, my mind miles away on forbidden thoughts. Nights were the true hell when the base quieted and defenses dropped. In my bunk, surrounded by the symphony of snoring comrades and the occasional cough, the tent fabric flapping against relentless gusts like sails in a storm, I'd replay Mike's betrayal over and over. How could he turn so quickly? The policy loomed large: don't ask, don't tell, really don't exist authentically, don't form bonds that could unravel everything. Yet universal longings persisted for connection, understanding, the simple human need to be seen and loved without judgment. Humans crave bonds, even in war zones where vulnerability is a liability. Small rituals became my anchors: morning runs around the perimeter, boots pounding dirt trails at sunrise, breath fogging in the crisp air as sweat built, evening stargazing from the rooftop observation post, constellations wheeling overhead mocking my earthly solitude with their eternal patterns. The road symbolized it all, those endless patrols offering movement without true resolution, a metaphor for my life always forward, never arriving. But deep down, a flicker of hope persisted, a quiet voice whispering that maybe someday the walls could crack, that change was possible even in this forsaken place. Little did I know, the desert's unforgiving twists held a catalyst named Ryan, ready to upend my carefully guarded world, forcing me to confront the desires I'd buried so deep. As weeks stretched into months, the routine became both armor and cage. I'd grip the steering wheel during drives, the engine's vibrations syncing with my pulse, radio tunes crackling faintly through static, country songs about lost loves and second chances hitting too close to home. "Get it together, Alex," I'd mutter under my breath, shaking off the memories that surfaced like ghosts in the dust clouds trailing behind. Isolation protected me from further pain, but the loneliness echoed in every quiet moment, the wind's mournful moan a lament for what could have been, for the connections I denied myself in fear. The inciting spark came on what should have been a standard supply run, deep in a narrow valley flanked by sheer rock faces that loomed like silent sentinels under a relentless sun. Our convoy, 5 Humvees loaded with ammo crates stacked high, water jugs sloshing, and morale-boosting mail packets tucked in corners, snaked through the rugged terrain, the air shimmering with heat waves that distorted the horizon. I was at the wheel of the lead vehicle, eyes glued to the ridgeline for any suspicious glint of metal or movement, the ever-present threat of ambush making every shadow a potential enemy hideout. The engine growled reassuringly, a deep vibration that synced with my pulse and drowned out intrusive thoughts, while tires crunched over loose gravel, spitting pebbles like miniature explosions echoing in the confined space. Before the breakdown, the patrol had been tense but routine. We'd left base at dawn, the gate creaking open with a groan of metal, engines revving in unison as we rolled out into the vastness. Radio chatter filled the cab, Alpha lead, confirm ETA to checkpoint. "Copy, 30 mics," I'd respond, voice steady despite the knot in my gut. The valley narrowed, walls closing in, and I scanned constantly, memories of past convoys flashing, ones where IEDs had turned vehicles into twisted wrecks. "Stay sharp," I muttered to my gunner, who nodded, turret swiveling slowly. The sun climbed higher, baking the air, sweat beading on my forehead as the AC struggled. Then, without warning, a sharp, metallic snap echoed from beneath the chassis, reverberating like a gunshot. The Humvee bucked violently, front end dipping sharply as the axle gave way under the strain, tires spinning futilely in the rising dirt cloud that enveloped us. "What the hell?" my gunner barked from the turret, swinging the .50 cal around instinctively, his voice laced with adrenaline. We skidded to a grinding halt, the convoy screeching behind us like a chain reaction of brakes and curses. Hearts hammering, we bilated out in a flurry of motion, rifles at the ready, boots hitting the ground with thuds as we formed a hasty perimeter, scanning for hostiles. Was it an IED detonation, sniper sabotage? No, just a damn pothole camouflaged by layers of dust, but in that exposed valley, vulnerability hit like a physical blow. The wind picked up then, howling through the narrow pass with increasing fury, carrying the dry scent of earth and adrenaline-fueled sweat. It whistled around us, amplifying the tension, as if the desert itself was mocking our predicament. Evac protocols kicked in immediately. Radio calls for support pierced the air, the static-laced urgency of convoy down, lead vehicle disabled, request immediate assistance. Over. But help was hours away, choppers tied up with higher priority ops elsewhere. That's when Ryan entered the picture, a figure emerging from the chaos like a lifeline. He'd transferred in just a week ago, a 28-year-old specialist from Georgia, with that easy southern drawl that drawled words like warm honey over grits. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow framing a face that held an optimism seeming out of place in this hellscape, his eyes sparkled with a resilience that intrigued and unsettled me. He'd been riding in the trailing Humvee and sprinted over, toolbox clanking in hand like a mechanic's symphony, his boots thudding against the hard-packed ground with purposeful strides. "Sarge, permission to assess the damage," he asked, dropping to one knee by the mangled wheel well, unfazed by the potential danger lurking in the hills. I nodded curtly, keeping my scope trained on the ridgeline's heart rate still elevated, but I couldn't ignore him completely. He worked methodically, wrench turning with metallic clinks that echoed in the valley, humming a faint tune, some old country song about lost highways, I later learned, that cut through the wind's moan like a defiant melody. The others milled about, griping about the delay in hushed tones, cigarettes lit with the flick of lighters, smoke curling lazily into the hot air. But Ryan. He chatted as he worked, his voice carrying over the tool's clamor. "This reminds me of home, fixin' trucks on my daddy's farm back in Georgia. Axles snap all the time in them red clay ruts, nothing a little elbow grease can't handle. You ever deal with something like this before, Sarge? Bet you've seen worse out here." His voice was warm, inviting response despite my reluctance. I grunted minimally, couple times, "Just get it fixed quick, we're sitting ducks." But he persisted, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of grease. Fair enough, me. I enlisted to see the world, but mostly to get away from folks who didn't get me. Small town, big judgments, like rules that don't make sense, forcing you to hide parts of yourself. His words hung in the air like smoke, a subtle probe that stirred unease deep within me. I shifted uncomfortably, rifle heavy in my hands, glancing at him sidelong. "Focus on the repair, specialist," I said, but my tone lacked its usual bite. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the valley walls in lengthening shadows that danced eerily, the wind easing to a gentle breeze rustling loose papers from the dash, he kept talking, drawing me in despite myself. "Ever feel trapped by those rules? Like back home, I had this thing, dated someone my family wouldn't approve of, had to keep it all under wraps. Sucks the life out of you, right? Pretending to be someone you're not." His eyes met mine then, a flicker of understanding or perhaps a challenge that made my pulse quicken. Was he hinting at shared secrets, at the taboo we both navigated under DADT? In the Army, such talks were landmines, capable of exploding careers. "Why tell me this now?" I asked, voice low, stepping closer under the guise of checking his progress. He shrugged, tool pausing mid-turn. "Trust my gut with you, Sarge. You seem solid, like you've got your own burdens weighing you down. No harm in sharing a bit, makes the time pass, don't it?" Discomfort coiled in my gut like a spring, but intrigue bloomed alongside it. His openness contrasted sharply with my caution, pulling me like gravity towards something forbidden. We worked together then, him directing with confidence, me assisting with lifts and holds, our hands brushing occasionally in the process, sending electric jolts I tried to ignore. "Hand me the jack there," he'd say casually, and as I passed it, he'd add with a grin, "Thanks, you're good at this, steady hands, strong grip." The compliments felt loaded, layered with subtext that made my cheeks flush under the helmet's brim. By dusk, as the recovery team was finally en route, he clapped my shoulder warm, lingering just a second too long. "We'll make it through this mess, Alex. Call me Ryan, none of that formal stuff when it's just us." The use of my name softened barriers I didn't know were cracking. Choppers arrived at last, their rotors thundering overhead like approaching thunder, whipping up dust storms that stung our eyes and filled our lungs. As we boarded, gear clanking, his presence lingered in my mind, a mix of fear and fascination. The taboo attraction had sparked undeniably, the road's unexpected disruption forcing me to confront buried desires I'd long suppressed. Back at base that night, in the quiet of my bunk, wind still whispering outside, I replayed the encounter, his drawl, his hints, the warmth of his touch. "What are you doing, Alex?" I whispered to myself, staring at the tent ceiling. In the days following the breakdown, Ryan and I were thrown together more than coincidence allowed, shared maintenance duties in the motor pool, joint patrols that extended our time in the Humvee's confined space where every bump and turn amplified proximity. The base, a sprawling maze of sandbagged walls, razor wire glinting under floodlights, and flapping tents that billowed like sails in the wind, became the unwitting stage for our evolving dynamic. The engine's familiar hum accompanied us on every outing, a rhythmic underscore to conversations that started shallow but dove deeper with each passing mile, tires hissing over uneven terrain, the occasional jolt from ruts jarring us physically and emotionally. At first, it was all business in the repair bay. "Pass the torque wrench," he'd say during fixes, his hands deft and grease-stained, moving with a precision that spoke of years working on farm equipment. But as we worked side by side under the harsh Afghan sun, sweat dripping in rhythmic plops onto the hot metal, barriers began to erode like sand in the wind. One sweltering afternoon, amid the clang of tools echoing off concrete barriers and the distant pop of controlled detonations on the range, he opened up unexpectedly. You ever miss home cooking, Sarge? My mama's fried chicken could bring peace to this godforsaken valley, crispy skin, juicy inside, with gravy that sticks to your ribs. His laugh was genuine, booming, and infectious, echoing off the vehicle like a challenge to the war's grimness. His laugh was genuine, booming, and infectious, echoing off the vehicle like a challenge to the war's grimness. I managed a rare smile, sharing a snippet from my past. Hot winters meant hearty stews from mom, potatoes, carrots, beef simmering all day. The crunch of snow under boots on the way home, steam rising from the bowl. Sounds cozy, he replied, eyes lighting up. Me, I miss the quiet nights on the porch swing, but not the arguments that came with them. Told my folks I'm gay last year, boom, like dropping a grenade in the living room. Dad said, son, in the army, you zip it under DADT or you're out. Hurt bad, like a punch to the gut. The word gay dropped like a stone into still water, ripples of taboo spreading in our world where such admissions could end careers. I froze, the wrench slipping slightly in my grip, clanging to the ground. Risky to say that here, Ryan walls have ears. He met my gaze steadily, wiping his hands on a rag. Trust my gut with you, Alex. You've got that guarded look, like someone's burned you before, left scars that don't show. Vulnerability hung heavy in the air, thick as the dust. That night, during a perimeter watch under a canopy of stars, the campfire crackling with sparks dancing upward like fireflies, I confessed bits of my own story. Yeah, burned bad, guy in basic Mike, we were close, real close. Stolen moments in the shadows, promises whispered in the dark. You're it for me, Alex, he'd say, pulling me in. But rumors hit and he flipped like a switch. It was Alex's idea, sir. I was just along for the ride. Left me hanging in the investigation, alone with the fallout. Ryan listened intently, poking the embers with a stick, flames reflecting in his eyes. That's rough, man. I had a boyfriend too, high school sweet, all secret dates and hidden notes. Love you forever, he whispered one night under the stars, but pressure from friends, family, it broke us. Hiding eats you alive, doesn't it? Makes you question if love's worth the risk. Our bond deepened through a series of shared trials that tested and forged us. A joint recon mission into hostile territory, navigating treacherous paths where the engine strained uphill with a protesting groan, radio chatter urgent and clipped, possible contact ahead, eyes open. We hunkered in the cab, tension thick, and he shared more mid-drive. Ever wonder about after the army, a life without secrets where you can just be? Every damn day, I admitted, voice barely above the hum. But fear stops me cold. What if it's another betrayal? Physical proximity grew inevitably, brushing arms in the tight space, shared meals at halts where forks clinked against metal trays, MREs sizzling over heaters. Try this, it's supposed to be chilly, but tastes like regret, he'd joke, passing a spoon. Then came the storm, hitting hard during a prolonged patrol, rain pounding the Humvee's roof like machine gun fire, wipers slashing frantically against sheets of water that blurred the world outside. The road turned to a quagmire, tires sinking with squelching protests, forcing us to abandon the vehicle and dig out under the deluge. Water cascaded in rivulets down our fatigues, soaking us to the bone, but laughter bubbled up amid the misery. This is nuts. He yelled over the roar, mud splattering his face. But hell with you, it's almost fun. His hand on mine during a coordinated push, warm, intentional, lingering, sparked a desire that warred with fear. Ryan, I started, pulling away slightly, rain streaming down my face. Don't fight it, Alex, he murmured, voice soft but firm. We're in this together, whatever this is. The fear of repetition of Mike's ghost clashed with the pull toward him, intensifying my internal storm. Another event layered on, a minor skirmish during a supply escort, distant shots popping like firecrackers, us hunkered behind sandbags returning fire with controlled bursts. Scared, he asked later, back in the tent, the zipper rasping shut as he entered, stripping off wet gear. Always, I confessed, sitting on my bunk. Of this too, us, what if we get caught, careers torched? He'd sit close, too close, his knee brushing mine. Me too, but connections worth fighting for, remember my ex. Hide or lose me, he said, I chose wrong, won't make that mistake again. Dialogues turned raw and frequent. What if this is real? I'd whisper in quiet moments. Then we face it together, he'd reply, his hand squeezing my shoulder. Pre-sunset silences in the cab, golden light filtering through dust-streaked windows, rain patters on canvas during storms, all amplified the emotions churning inside. The road, once a solitary escape, now bridged our fears, each event forging trust amid the taboo, pulling us inexorably closer. The climax erupted in a blaze of unrelenting chaos, 3 months into the tour, on a moonless night patrol through enemy-infested territory that felt like descending into the mouth of hell. Our convoy rolled out under cover of darkness, headlights dimmed to mere slits to avoid detection, the engine's subdued growl blending seamlessly with the night's oppressive silence that pressed in from all sides. Stars pierced the velvet sky like distant artillery fire, but tension coiled tight in the cab. Intel had whispered of increased activity in the area, every shadow along the road a potential threat lurking just out of sight. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white against the worn leather, Ryan riding shotgun with his rifle cradled ready, the faint scent of his aftershave cutting through the metallic tang of old weapons and nervous sweat. The patrol had started routinely enough, leaving base with the gate's hydraulic whine, engines sinking in a low rumble as we ventured into the black. Radio checks punctuated the quiet, Alpha lead status. All clear so far, I'd respond, but doubt nod past ambushes flashed in my mind, twisted metal and screams. Ryan sensed it, glancing over. Nights like this make you think, about what matters. Yeah, I muttered, like getting home in one piece. Ambush struck like lightning from a clear sky. Tracers arced from the ridges above, brilliant green streaks slicing the black void, AK rounds rattling against our armor in a deafening tattoo that shook the vehicle. Incoming, contact right, the radio blared, static shredding words into urgency. Explosions boomed nearby, earth erupting in geysers of dirt and flame, the Humvee shuddering violently as shrapnel peppered the hull like hail on tin. We veered off the road in a desperate swerve, tires shredding on jagged rocks with a screech, crashing into a ditch with a bone-jarring thud that jarred teeth and spines. Dust choked the cabin instantly, coughs mixing with frantic shouts as visibility dropped to zero. Out now, I yelled, kicking the armored door open with a clang, rifle up as we spilled into the fray, boots hitting uneven ground. Bullets whined past our heads, pinging off rocks like angry hornets swarming, the acrid smoke of cordite burning nostrils and throats. We hunkered behind the tilted vehicle, returning fire in controlled bursts, muzzle flashes illuminating grim, determined faces, the recoil thumping against shoulders like hammer blows. Ryan was right beside me, steady as a rock, his shots precise and methodical. "Cover the left flank, I've got right," he called, voice cutting through the din like a lifeline. "Got it." I replied, heart pounding wildly, adrenaline surging as I squeezed the trigger, brass casings ejecting with hot pings. But then a rocket screamed in from the darkness, detonating nearby with a thunderous roar that deafened momentarily, showering us in debris and hot fragments. Ryan grunted sharply, a pain sound that pierced my soul, clutching his arm where blood bloomed dark on his sleeve, shrapnel embedded like cruel barbs in flesh. Panic surged, raw and primal, overriding training. "Ryan, no." I dragged him closer behind cover, tearing open my med kit with trembling hands, the rip of Velcro lost in the cacophony of battle. Bandages unfurled hastily, pressed against the wound with firm pressure, his blood warm and sticky on my fingers, staining my gloves. Our eyes locked amid the hellstorm, fear mirroring in his pain-etching lines on his face, but something deeper, more profound, shining through. "Hold on, damn it," I urged, voice breaking. "Alex, if we don't make it out," he gasped, wincing as another explosion rocked the ground nearby. In that frozen instant, life's fragility crystallized before me, years of repression under DADT, the taboo chaining my heart, all meaningless against the yawning void of loss. The policy, the risks, they paled in the face of this moment. "No," I said fiercely, leaning in closer, gunfire roaring around us like a symphony of destruction. "We will. Because I love you, Ryan, all this time fighting it, the touches in the cab, the talks by the fire, the way you look at me like I'm worth something. You're the one who broke through my walls. I can't lose you without saying it. I've loved you since that damn breakdown." The words poured out honest and desperate, a confession forged in the crucible of war. His eyes widened in shock, then filled with a fierce emotion that mirrored my own, tears mixing with sweat on his cheeks. "God, Alex, I love you too. From that first moment your strength pulled me in like gravity." "Steady hands," I said back then, but it was your heart, your guarded soul that I fell for. Been scared to admit it, terrified of the fallout, but yeah, love you more than anything. Amid the unrelenting gunfire's roar and the whine of ricochets, we shared a kiss, fierce and urgent, tasting of blood, salt, and unyielding passion, a defiant claim against the chaos threatening to engulf us. It sealed the transformation, from fear to unbridled hope, from hiding in shadows to embracing authenticity in the light of muzzle flashes. "We'll get through this," he murmured against my lips, a promise etched in pain and resolve. Backup thundered in at last, choppers descending from the night sky, rotors whipping wind that scattered dust devils and debris, spotlights piercing the darkness like divine intervention. Medics swarmed the scene, boots pounding as they reached us, pulling Ryan aboard with efficient urgency, but his hand gripped mine one last time, a squeeze that conveyed volumes, a promise of tomorrow. Gunfire ebbed gradually as reinforcements engaged the enemy, the valley echoing with fatting pops and shouts. I stood there amid the settling dust, changed irrevocably. Love had triumphed over taboo, hope igniting in the ashes of fear. 6 months post-ambush, stateside soil felt both foreign and freeing. Deployment wrapped amid the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 2011, a policy shift that came too late for some scars but opened doors for healing. Ryan's arm mended, the scar a pink ridge he'd traced with a grin, my badge of honor for us. We discharged honorably, no probes into whispers, stepping into civilian chaos with cautious optimism. I landed trucking gigs, hauling freight across interstates. The roads hum a familiar comfort now infused with purpose, not escape but journey shared. Life wasn't instant bliss, reality's bit. Prejudice lingered in truck stops, sidelong glares in diners where our closeness drew murmurs, the clink of silverware pausing suspiciously. Ignore him, Ryan would say over burgers, his hand brushing mine under the table. Family challenges arose, his Georgia kin thawed via calls, drawls softening edges. Mom, meet Alex, my partner, he'd say tentatively. Awkward pauses, then acceptance, if he makes you happy, mine in Ohio. Therapy helped unpack, sessions with a counselor, clock ticking as I voiced traumas. Betrayal left me guarded, I'd share. Ryan attended some, adding, we found each other in hell, now building heaven. New rituals bloomed, morning coffee in roadside motels, percolator gurgling as dawn light filtered through curtains, steam carrying promises. Love waking to you, he'd murmur. Road trips, my rig's engine harmonizing with his Jeep's, windows down, wind rushing with sense of freedom. Shared dinners, steaks sizzling on grills at campsites, flames crackling. Remember the ambush, he'd ask. Your confession saved me. Small struggles, logistics of halls, balancing jobs, facing pals' questions. We're together, we'd say proudly. Hope prevailed, universal second chances. One evening, desert highway stars blazing, I pulled over. Gravel crunched, engine idling. Road was running, now it's us. Kiss gentle, affirming. Life settled, Midwest home, hikes with leaf rustles, peace replacing war. Love healed, trust reborn, engines humming in unison, horizon beckoned promise. Small joys accumulated, weekend getaways, lazy Sundays with books and coffee, building a life brick by brick. Challenges like job stress or societal glances were met with resilience forged in war. We survived bullets, Ryan would say. We can handle this. Future dreams included a house with a garage, perhaps adopting a dog, simple things that felt profound after the chaos. The road, once a symbol of solitude, now represented partnership, each mile a testament to our bond. As we drove on, the sun setting in a blaze of color, I felt grateful for the journey, from isolation to love, from fear to hope. The desert's lessons lingered, but now they fueled our forward motion together.